The group wanted to take the message right to the prosecutor who recommended the grand jury come back with no charges. They had a message specifically for him. Not only were they displeased with his handling of the case, they also want him to step down.
On a line going down this street, we want his neighbors to see what they did to Tamir.
Tamir Rice's cousin telling a group of demonstrators to lay down on the ground in front of Prosecutor McGinty's home. The group staying there for 4 minutes.
It is not acceptable.
Symbolizing the time the 12-year-old lay bleeding to death without help from the officers involved in his death.
There is no words that can describe how heinous this action was.
Goldsby speaking for the first time since the grand jury made its decision.
It's been very hard to bring this new year, these past holidays. It's been very trying.
About 150 people, old and young, white and black, taking their message directly to the prosecutor.
I believe that there are other choices that McGinty had and that he should have chosen them.
Their purpose multifaceted, demanding a federal investigation into Rice's death and the firing of Timothy Lohman and Frank Garback, the policemen in the cruiser that day.
Y'all are the future.
The small children marching with the group, placing flowers near the prosecutor's driveway. A visual message left after the voices quiet and the marching ends. Now, from a broader perspective, the protesters are also looking for changes to the system, calling for an independent prosecutor in all police-involved shootings. Afterward, the group gathered at a Rocky River church for what's called a speak out. The group debriefed and planned next steps in their efforts for change. Another note, Sarah, this was a very cold day, and despite that, the group demonstrated for about 2 hours.
All right. Thank you, Hillary. The Tamir Rice case is once again front and center, with reports that the grand jurors in the case never voted on whether to charge the officers.
It is a story a lot of folks are talking about tonight. Channel 3's Hillary Golston joins us now to break it down and give us a reaction from all sides in the case. Hillary, good evening.
And good evening to you, Russ and Sarah. In short, yes, it is possible the grand jury didn't vote, but both experts I spoke with, including a former grand jury foreman, say the members most likely voted. The prosecutor's office confirms there was never what's called a no-bill document filed, but as you'll find out, that doesn't mean there wasn't a vote of any kind. It all started with this headline in Cleveland Scene magazine. The grand jury in the Tamir Rice case did not take a vote on charges. How can we know that?
There's no way. I mean, it's pure speculation.
What we do know is the normal procedure in police shooting cases from the prosecutor. He gives his opinion about whether the officer should be charged. And if the grand jurors disagree with the assessment of the county prosecutor's office, grand jurors can ask for a true bill, no bill opportunity.
I would have expected to see a no bill. We got kind of a no bill.
To simply explain the difference between a no bill and a true bill means charges are coming. A no bill means no charges.
I think they voted to no bill it, but nobody signed the no bill.
Former Cuyahoga grand jury foreman Jerry Gold knows this process better than anyone. He's one of the few in the county who's presided over a grand jury and seen it work under Prosecutor McGinty.
There's no question in my mind that there had to be a vote, because this was too much publicity to walk away. So, and they knew, but what they did, obviously, they reported orally to the judge.
It's just odd. Everything about this case has been unique and out of the ordinary. So frankly, it doesn't surprise me that this is out of the ordinary.
To the attorney for Tamir Rice, the lack of a no-bill document is no good. Subho Chandra writes, it only underscores the family's concerns that the prosecutor rigged the process to ensure no accountability for the officers. Only one thing we can know for sure.
We don't know the full extent of, and nor will we ever know really the full extent of what went on there.
And this is a decidedly complicated aspect of this case. People who know a lot about it even find themselves perplexed by the level of complexity. The grand juror's declaration that it declined to issue criminal charges makes some wonder if they voted on them. As Ms. Trapp says, we'll just never know, Russ.
Thanks for breaking it down, because as you said, it's very confusing. We were talking about it in the newsroom tonight, and you did a really nice job of making it easy for people to understand.
Thank you so much.
All right, Hillary, thank you. Channel 3's Hillary Golston here now with details. Hillary, good evening.
And good evening to you, Russ and Sarah. Mayor Frank Jackson, the finance director and chief corporate counsel for the Cleveland, all stood up today, did a mea culpa, "We made a mistake here. We're sorry." They say it was an honest blunder and there was no intent to do any harm, but the damage may lie elsewhere in public perception. Insult to homicide. Cleveland sues Tamir Rice's family for ambulance fees. The headline from the Atlantic magazine. The news reaching across the globe with British news outlet Daily Mail. All 4 national networks: NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News. Headlines galore, and not the kind Cleveland wants.
To the city of Cleveland, the world is watching.
And it is world and national headlines. Proof.
The world is watching.
Those comments were made at a press conference Tamir Rice's family organized, the first time the city made a misstep, blaming the 12-year-old for his own death.
We are apologizing.
That was March of 2015.
Again, apologizing to the Rice family.
This was just hours ago. Mayor Frank Jackson standing in the same place, making virtually the same comments.
The support in the nations is just holding me up.
The nation apparently training its eye on what happened then and is happening now. Even presidential candidate Hillary Clinton weighing in, calling the move heartless. And the city did indeed drop this fee today. Corporate counsel says the city filed a claim in probate court after Rice's estate requested a bill. And they are parsing words here. They say the bill never went to the family. It instead went to the estate. Mayor Jackson said he wants to put some checks and balances in place to catch stuff like this from happening. But remember, he did say the same thing the last time he had to apologize for a little bit of insensitivity in the Rice case. I don't think it would be unfair to say black clergy were one of the most significant organizers against McGinty. Our senior political correspondent Tom Barris explained a myriad of reasons why O'Malley won the day. McGinty's personality, Democrats crossing over to vote in the GOP primary. But in this race, black clergy acted as a lobby. They brought the full force of their political gauntlet.
McGinty must go, period.
Those words turned out to be prophetic, coming from a clergy member. Just a few months later, Cuyahoga County prosecutor Tim McGinty out.
They're very interesting people. Let me just leave it at that. And they have their own economic motives.
Oh, my God. Oh, boy.
The prosecutor took a lot of heat for those words after our question about Samaria Rice and her attorneys.
He embarrassed and humiliated a young African-American woman who had just lost a child, and which is one of the most horrendous things that can happen to a mother.
The handling of the Tamir Rice case, along with other high-profile deadly use of force cases, at the heart of a political lobby of about 50 clergy members bent on bouncing McGinty from office.
You want to talk to us now because it's voting time, but what about a year ago when you wouldn't take a meeting with us? And you said there was no need to talk to the black preachers because we didn't know what we was talking about. So because of that, he made it easy for us to come together.
Every now and then, David defeats Goliath, and every now and then, the underdog prevails.
David and Goliath, a metaphor O'Malley has alluded to himself. But being on the same page with O'Malley now doesn't guarantee this group's support in the future.
If we elect you, we can remove you.
I'm not Tim McGinty.
Something these religious leaders are banking on. And black clergy in Cleveland have effectively used their political apparatus before, like when they backed Armin Budish. And clearly impactful here. Since January, they've had O'Malley in front of black congregations almost every single Sunday, Sarah. Hi there, Russ and Sarah. Now that the criminal portion of the Tamir Rice case is over, from the city's perspective, it's now about an administrative review. This is a look at the case from different lenses.
That's why I say a wrong has been done. Now, whether that wrong is legal, whether or not it is administrative, the fact is a 12-year-old has lost their life. It should not have happened. It should not have happened.
Mayor Frank Jackson wanting to move quickly, letting the police department review everything that happened November 22nd of last year.
What can I say to a mother? You tell me what I'm going to say to a mother.
The committee to include community members, grand jury testimony, the sheriff's investigation, and this now infamous video considered.
All that in totality will determine if there was wrongdoing by these officers. And if it bears that out, then we will deal with that.
Mayor Jackson taking an opportunity to comment on strides to continue police reform and the questions of bias brought up by the Rice family after the decision.
The people who are discontent around what I call the pattern and practice of constitutional violations are just not associated with race now, is associated with a much broader group.
The focus now for the mayor, getting it right, which for him is making sure the process of review, due process, is above reproach. Now, we also had the opportunity to hear from the mayor and the chief of police about how they're handling these protests, and they're giving us a look at the policy coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. They say they are ready for anything and everything. We're live in Cleveland tonight. I'm Hillary Golston, Channel 3 News.
Okay, Hillary, we'll see you at 7. Thank you.
You can count on Channel. Hi, Hillary.
Hi there, Sarah. Yes, the mayor and the police chief say that they are ready for anything. But now the mayor's big focus is that administrative review of the Tamir Rice case. Although, as you've been watching with Chris Ty and Andrew Haransky, absolutely the big focus is also on those protests.
A 12-year-old lost his life. Something happened.
As police take a long look at what happened the day Tamir Rice was fatally shot by police. The city is keeping an eye on protests around Cleveland.
No, I don't worry about protests. People have a right. I mean, people have a right. It is America.
Mayor Frank Jackson welcoming peaceful protests with no tolerance for harm to people or property. But they're prepared for everything.
We're not trying to cause a panic or a riot. We're trying to do what we do, and I think we demonstrated that we do it quite well.
The chief says police will be clad in normal uniforms unless things escalate and get out of control. Riot gear and helmets, not the plan straight out of the gate.
Our officers are going to do what they need to do to keep people safe, and that's been our posture from day one.
Now, that committee that's been set up to review what happened in the Tamir Rice case will include community members. Police Chief Calvin Williams also indicating today that they will be looking over the grand jury testimony as well as the entire sheriff's investigation. We're live here in Cleveland. I'm Hillary Golston, Channel 3 News.
Thanks, Hillary. 3's Hillary Golston continues our team coverage tonight. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Sarah. The New York Times ran a scathing editorial yesterday. Today, the Washington Post took aim. The Washington Post piece argues prosecutor Tim McGinty turned the grand jury process upside down. The author is critical of McGinty for seeking a non-indictment and taking a defense-oriented position rather than presenting neutral evidence for consideration. Now, the New York Times even takes the criticism further, writing, quote, Tamir had the misfortune of being black in a poor area of Cleveland where the police have historically behaved as an occupying force that shoots first and ask questions later, end quote. A claim the police union strongly disagrees with. We spoke with him over the phone, police union president Steve Loomis, who told me, I can't believe an educated editorial board wrote that opinion. Their opinion is not based on fact, it's based on false narrative that they have to push in a weak attempt to sell papers. Now, prosecutor McGinty has argued that he presented a great deal of information to the grand jury in the interest of transparency. Channel 3 has reached out several times to prosecutor McGinty's office for comment. His spokesman said they were declining comment at this time. All of this comes as Cleveland prepares for next summer's Republican National Convention, where the region will be on view from a world stage. And Sarah, the hope of local leaders here is that lessons can be learned and real reform can come from this tragedy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hillary.
Hillary Golston is covering that angle of the story for us this evening. Hillary, hi.
Hi there, Chris and Sarah. Many have been vocal about the grand jury's decision not to indict, but now many of those opinions have been written down, and we can say that they're not all flattering for Cleveland. In the streets, we want freedom, freedom! For the third day straight, people protesting in Cleveland over what they feel is unjust. A no bill in the Tamir Rice case.
We must love each other and support each other.
Across the nation, headlines condemning the grand jury's outcome read this way: Cleveland's terrible stain, and prosecutors twist grand juries to protect police. The New York Times writing in an editorial, Tamir had the misfortune of being black in a poor area of Cleveland, where the police have historically behaved as an occupying force that shoots first and asks questions later. The police union president responding, Their opinion is not based on fact. It's based on false narrative that they have to push in a weak attempt to sell papers.
They talked about his age. So the implication is that if you're old enough, we can shoot you for no other reason than because you look old.
Back here at home, a coalition of activists vowing not to back down with civil disobedience.
This is not a proud moment in Cleveland's history, I don't think. Whether or not you agree with the grand jury's decision, the division that it's caused, I mean, those are things that should affect us.
Calls for justice also coming from a city councilman.
We have Fourth Amendment rights, and you cannot seize our lives.
Asking Cleveland's law director to charge the officers involved in Tamir Rice's death with negligent homicide. Now, the organization that held that press conference today, the coalition of organizations, they say that they want the police union's contract to be renegotiated with the city so that it complies with the consent decree. We had a chance to speak with Steve Loomis, the police union president. He says he doesn't like it. He thinks that these activists are just trying to advance their own interests. We're live here in Cleveland tonight. I'm Hillary Golston, Channel 3 News. Tamir's mother wept so much when she found out the grand jury would not be indicting the officers involved in her son's death. She could barely speak. And that's what her attorney, Subodh Chandra, said in an interview today. But he also had some comments about how we got here, and some of it he's not happy about.
It's very hard. Things do not feel the same, you know. It's been a year, and still no justice.
That was the last time we spoke with Samaya Rice before today's decision. After the grand jury's no bill, family members feel the justice system failed them.
It was very difficult for Samaya Rice to even speak. I mean, she was weeping so hard at the news.
Samaria's attorney, Subodh Chandra, said Tamir's mother didn't have it in her to speak after the decision, but in a statement turned their disappointment towards the prosecutor, writing, "Prosecutor McGinty deliberately sabotaged the case, never advocating for my son and acting instead like the police officer's defense attorney."
I have never seen in my career a prosecutor try so hard to lose a case.
The family going on to write, "We no longer trust the local criminal justice system, which we view as corrupt." A non-indictment for the family, an indictment of the system.
There is not a prosecutor in America who is sincerely interested in investigating and getting to the truth of what happened when there are subjects and targets of investigation, who would take a pass on cross-examining the subjects or targets of investigation.
Samaya Rice hoping for something she never got. And Chandra also said that the request for the DOJ to investigate this case also asked that they look into Prosecutor McGinty. The family also said in a time in which a non-indictment for 2 police officers who have killed an unarmed black child is business as usual, we mourn for Tamir and for all the black people who have been killed by the police without justice. Sarah.